enterprise.
Hello and welcome to New Covenant Christian Ministry Entrepreneurship Series. I'm Florena Oliver and I am so happy to welcome you back to our second session on entrepreneurship and discussing the book, Jesus the CEO. Again, I have with me my dear brother. Would you want to say hello to all those who've joined us today?
Hello out there. I am excited to be back again. I am Stephen Bromell. Let's jump right into this thing.
Yeah, let's do that.
So last time we were here, we talked about Jesus and self-mastery. We talked about the wilderness experience.
Yes.
We talked about how sometimes it's going to be darker before you actually come out into the light, and that how hard it is sometimes in that wilderness experience, but embrace it anyway. And we talked about our words have power, understanding the I ams, that Jesus used I am often because he understood his purpose. He had clarity of purpose, and he was understanding who he was. In business, you have to determine on who you are and who you're going to be in business, and you have to repeat that to yourself frequently, that I am highly successful. Now, you can be saying, I am highly successful, and everything is being torn down around you. Mm-hmm. But it's the internal that you have that's going to keep you believing that you are successful. We talked about God is the boss.
The number one.
And that was huge. Understanding that your number one customer is not that customer that's paying you the most money. I know that's hard for everybody out there that's listening to understand, but your number one customer, in fact, is God, because he provides it all. And so if we are worshiping that customer, now that's a little different from you providing excellent service to a customer.
That's a difference.
But what we're talking about is worshiping. If we're going to worship, we worship the boss, which is God.
Absolutely. And then the last thing we talked about in the last session was believing in yourself, and how you have to have 100% belief in yourself as an entrepreneur that you can do this. We know that's not an easy thing to do. The two of us sitting up here, we've not always had 100% belief in ourselves. And there are times even today.
No, stop. Are you serious?
Extremely. And there are even times now that I'm running two businesses that I wonder, can I do this? So it's okay to question it, but when you question it, make sure that you're looking at the business. You're not running the business in a mirror, but you're running it with windows. In other words, you may stand in front of that mirror and say, oh, I'm this, I'm that, I'm that. But when you stand in front of that window, you're like the song says, windows of heaven, you're waiting for the blessings to come in.
Oh, sissy, you trying to throw something in the Kool-Aid today. We got to unpack this window and mirror thing.
Yes.
Because when you said that, I thought about it. If you are constantly running your business, looking in the mirror, then you think the business is being ran by you.
Good point.
But when we're looking out the window, we see more of the possibilities.
Yes.
And we can actually see past ourselves in our own fears, in our own those little things that don't line up right, that make up who we are.
Yes,
we can look past
absolutely.
that, and we can see the future, and we can see the vision when we're looking out a window. Now, let me make sure that I caution you. There's nothing wrong with the window, though. Because sometimes you do need to see that reflection of yourself.
The mirror. There's nothing wrong with the mirror.
The mirror, I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with the mirror. Sometimes you need that reflection in the mirror to actually see yourself and say, hey, you. And you point your finger at yourself and say, hey, you need to get up 30 minutes early. Hey, you need to go and call that customer again. So what? The customer said no 5 times. Hey, you need to make sure you don't overspend. Hey, you need to make better choices and better decisions. You need the mirror for that. But beyond that, we need to be looking out of that window.
There's an exercise. I'm glad you mentioned that. There's an exercise that I usually share with people that I coach. And I say to them, I want you to stand in the mirror and say no to yourself as many times as you can. No, 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 no. The reason I suggest people do that is because if you hear the word no enough, when you hear it from somebody else, it won't matter. And then you'll get the attitude that says, oh, I'm going to go try that, or I'm going to ask this person for that. Because what's the worst thing they can say is no.
They say no.
But you've heard that. But if you don't have the belief in yourself that you can take a no, then you'll never be able to take that next step.
I'm always reminded of one of Les Brown's motivational speeches when he talked about wanting to be a DJ. And he talked about his mentor telling him, if you want it, go down there to the station, introduce yourself, and ask for a job. The first time he went down to the station, they said they were not hiring. He said, okay, thank you. And I believe the man's name was Mr. Buttersworth. He went back down there the next day, and he did the exact same thing again. And the guy said, we are not hiring today. And he said, well, I thought somebody might have died or somebody might have got sick. He went back multiple times until eventually the last time he went back, the man looked at him and said, go get me some coffee. That is you pursuing your vision with a reckless abandon and not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. That's what you have to do as an entrepreneur, because this is not an easy trail, not an easy trail at all. But if you believe in yourself and begin to build that belief from the 75% that we said last time that most people have, and work on that other 25 so you can get to that 100%. So let's start bringing in some of the new stuff that we want to share. We're still going through Lori Beth Jones' book, Jesus CEO. And for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, we're using her book as a guide for our conversations. The book was published in 1992, so it may be a little difficult to obtain a hard copy of the book, but it is available on audio. So if you want to download Laura Beth Jones' book, Jesus the CEO, that's the book that we're using as we have these conversations. And in that book, you will find that she divides Jesus' ministry as a CEO into 3 sections. And the first section is self-mastery. The strength of self-mastery.
Strength of action.
Strength of action. And that last one?
Strength of relationship.
Strength of relationship. So today we're going to continue in the discussion of the strength of mastery. And one of the points that Laurie makes is you have to have internal anchors. Now, I found this one to be very valuable for me because she says in the book that you gotta have a backbone of steel. And we talked before last time, we talked about wilderness experiences, and I started my first business in 2008. Anybody kind of remember what was happening then? 2007, 2008. Anybody remember what was happening then?
Financial meltdown.
And here I go trying to start a business. So a meltdown was not what I had. I had the worst valley experience in my life. Everything went wrong. I lost everything from cars to power to, phones. I lost it all. Meanwhile, I'm a single mom trying to raise a child. And just left a 6-figure job, right? Because I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But again, one thing that I do remember very vividly from that Valley experience is though I lost a lot of things, I never lost the lights in my house. I got gas cut off. I got phones cut off, but the lights never went off. And that was very symbolic to me because Jesus is my light. And he never left me. He never forsake me. And what that Valley experience taught me was one, that I had to build a backbone of steel, but that I could come out of it if I remembered who my internal anchor was.
Let me take a wild guess that your internal anchor was God.
You're so smart.
See, guys, genius is on display. It had to be God, because when I hear people say, I lost it all, then you have to really think, did you really lose it all, or you just lost stuff?
Good point. Very good point. Very
Because
good point.
when we have Christ inside of us, we always have a fighting chance. And I hate to have to go back to Les Brown again, but one of the things he said is if you get knocked down, at least fall on your back so you can look up. And if you look up, you can get up. And when we have Christ in our corner, there's always another opportunity to get back up and do it again. And then don't miss the fact of failing gives you an opportunity to get insight into your next opportunity to succeed.
Boy, did it educate me. It really educated me. And I used that experience to educate other small business owners. Because you couldn't tell me at that point that I wasn't going to leave my job of 26 years where I was senior manager, I had all of these contacts, and be a successful training business, because I thought I knew. But I didn't know. And that experience taught me to always be learning. That's one of my prime things that I try to share with everybody. Never stop learning. Because as an entrepreneur, if you're continually willing to learn, then you will be able to be successful, because you need not, one of the reasons you need to continually learn is because you continually need to be looking at your business to say, oh, what do I need to tweak over here? Oh, maybe I need to change that. Oh, I need to look at how much it costs to ship this. Or maybe my packaging is costing me too much and that's why my profit isn't there. But you have to have that continual, that desire for continuous learning to be a successful entrepreneur.
You are absolutely correct. Your business is always evolving. The financial markets are always evolving. Life is always evolving. If you get stuck on your previous success or failure, you never move. And so you have to be willing to move. And that internal anchor, that internal download that we get, we talked about downloads on the last session.
You did bring in that little nugget.
When you get those internal downloads, then what it does, it makes you stronger as a person, because now you have something to lean on. Think about it this way. If you did not have an anchor on your boat, the boat would be of no use, because it would just aimlessly just float in the water, going nowhere in particular. So every time the waves come, the boat will go based on the waves. But when you have an anchor, once you got to the point where you need to be, you could always throw that anchor out. Which brings me to a point that you have to understand in business, sometimes you get to a stopping point, a comma, where you have to throw your anchor out and say, I'm going to pause for a minute to make sure that I have foundational principles in place. And if you do not do that, then you will aimlessly keep on going and going and going. Before long, you understand that you don't went so far, you have no foundation. You've built on sand. And you don't want to do that in business. So you want to make sure that with the internal anchors that you use it when it's necessary, that you call on it when you need it.
And we can't discount in this particular environment that we're in right now, where there's a pandemic throughout the world, that many businesses, many industries are having to pivot. There's been some statistics that over 50% of the African American businesses will not return. That's a lot. That's very devastating. So what happens in a situation like that, Steve?
Well, first of all, you don't have to believe what is said. And if you listen to the news and you listen to that report that 50% of the businesses will not return, make sure you're not a part of that 50% of the business. Make sure you make up in your mind that I'm not going to be a part of that. Once you come into agreement with what is being said, you almost say it's going to happen to me. And so when you have an internal anchor, you understand that God is the one that's going to determine whether I succeed in this or not, and put it off on him.
And then by having that anchor too, when you lift that anchor and you start floating, you may float in a different direction. As many of the businesses are doing. I know of one particular business that he used to make displays for, big trade shows and that kind of thing. He used to make booths and stuff like that. Well, that industry is just about nil at this time. So what did he do? He pivoted his business, and now he's making the plexiglass shields that everybody is buying. So he is now, I believe, making more money doing that than he did when he was doing this displays. So you gotta be willing. If you're anchored, it doesn't mean you don't move, but you move in the right direction when it's time to move.
Yes. And when God give you that dream and vision, you have to constantly work on it. I was watching a show just a few days ago, and there was someone that was presenting their product, and the product was a mask, the same mask that everyone is looking for now, the covering. They were 3 or 4 years before the pandemic. They were told that it was a horrible idea, nobody wanted it. No, right now, if that person quit, they would not have been ready for this opportunity that has presented itself, albeit, something that's affecting everybody in a negative way, but that business would have been able to survive if they had kept on making those masks and waiting for the opportunity.
Having that internal anchor. And the other part of having an anchor is you've got to guard your energy. We know Jesus guarded his energy. He was very, very selective of who he allowed into his inner circle. Because he knew how important it was to make sure that he stayed strong, so that he could stay on point and on course. And we know one of the greatest stories of how his energy was zapped was that of the woman with the issue of the blood. So, and I know you mentioned that story in our first session, but let's talk about it a little bit more in terms of guarding your energy, the way Jesus guarded his energy and the woman with the issue of blood.
Well, when we talk about guarding the energy, you have to make sure you have things in place so that others don't come in and zap that joy that you have. And when I think about energy, I think about the joy. I think about the power. I think about what God is giving you to operate your business. And every day you're going to be faced with challenges from other people that's going to come in and they want a piece of you. And as you grow in success, there will be more people that's going to want a piece of you. And you have to be wise, you have to have discernment, and you have to be spirit-filled and led so that you know who you allow to touch the hem of your garment. So
that people wanting a piece of you, I think, goes back to what we said in the previous session about how people will send you credit cards. They'll offer you all kinds of loans to run your business. All of that is trying to take a piece of you, take a piece of your energy. So those are things as an entrepreneur you really need to be mindful of as you're moving to the next level. And then another part of the topic is Jesus did difficult things. He didn't do anything, the miracles that he performed, he didn't do anything that was just, the feeding of the 5,000 men, not knowing how many women were there, with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. He did difficult things. But the one thing that Laurie said under this topic that I think is worth repeating is she talked about the definition of professionals. She said, professionals have a tendency, professionals stand alone, where the masses usually lean towards mediocrity. So when you see people saying, "Oh, we can get away with not making sure that our product is up to par," or you see people say, "Oh, well, we didn't finish that job correctly," those are not the professionals or or living up to how Jesus did difficult things. And those are the people that if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to stay away from.
Absolutely. You want to put yourself around those who are going in the same direction that you're going in. And you have to define that direction beforehand. If your direction of business is excellence, then you surround yourself with people that are doing business in excellence. You cannot win doing things halfway. You cannot get an ideal and you're so giddy about the ideal that you jump in it before you have certain things in place that's going to allow you to do things the right way. Because there's a wrong and there's a right way about doing business. And when you do things the wrong way in business, it shows up, and a lot of people can get hurt, including you, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. And so when you are walking out business and you're professing to be a Christian in business, you have to understand that sometimes it's going to cause you to stand alone, because you're going to have to stand on your morals. You're going to have to stand on your confessions of faith, professions of faith. You're going to have to stand on that and say that, listen, for me and my business, I know we've heard this before, for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. But you have to turn that around and say, for me and my business, we're going to serve the Lord, and we're going to do it through excellence.
And I want to talk to Christian business owners because I had a little pet peeve with Christian business owners.
What's your pet peeve?
My pet peeve with Christian business owners is in the marketplace, in my 9-to-5 job, which thanks to God, I'm still working from home. I deal with a lot of major corporations and a lot of small business owners. And the one thing that there's a reputation out there, I don't know if Christian business owners know this, but there's a reputation out there that we don't do things in excellence. There's a reputation out there that says when you see the fish on the card, run. Now,
Is that just catfish or bass?
Now, and I'm not speaking to all Christian business owners, but I do want to share that we got to live up to a different standard. We can't allow mediocrity, as they talked about here in the book. We cannot let mediocrity define the Christian business. We want to live up. If we really have God as a boss, and if we're really following the Jesus CEO model, we're going to make sure that our Christian business is one that when they see that fish, they know that, yes, this is going to be done in excellence. I don't have to worry about anything because this person, this woman, this man is a man of honor, and they are following the principles of Jesus Christ, the CEO. So that's my pet peeve.
You said a lot. The fish, the Christian businesses, that is something we hear a lot, but that can be changed. Simply can be changed by us learning from each other, by us being willing to take that criticism, that criticism that is not thrown your way to make you feel bad or look bad, but that criticism that's thrown your way that's going to make you be better. Oftentimes when we're using businesses, Christian businesses, like you said, we don't give them a second chance. And so it's up to consumers, us that's using Christian businesses. If they're not doing it right, maybe you need to pull them aside and tell them that, listen, if you did it this way, maybe things would have been a little differently, and still giving them an opportunity to do it a second time. We kind of have this one and done mentality when it comes to working with Christian businesses, and that has to change. But we must change first by making sure that we understand that there's a certain way to do it right.
And that's why we're here now, because we're hoping that as we share these nuggets from Lori and from our experiences, that they will help you as a Christian business, but also help you as a Christian consumer. to understand that you can give them that second chance. That's a good point you made. I think we do have that one and done because our expectations were so high as you coming in as a Christian business. I think that's a really good point. So the next thing, and these two I'm really anxious to talk about it, and I think I'm going to pull them both together. And that is in the book, Lori talks about as a principle of self-mastery that Jesus gave thanks and Jesus was consistently in a state of celebration.
Celebration. Let's celebrate.
So let's talk about that, Jesus giving thanks. And the one point that I have here, and I want you to chime in, is that gratitude is a key element of leadership. Gratitude is a key element of leadership.
You said it all. Gratitude. Being thankful for the opportunity that God has given you. God has given us this great opportunity to not really have a ceiling on income, to not really have a ceiling on how high you can go. So why wouldn't we give him thanks? To get up every morning to say, Father, thank you for the opportunity to be able to go to a business and do something that I really enjoy doing for the benefit, not just of myself, but the benefit of others. And so when we start putting it in the context of servant, anytime somebody says leadership, I always say leadership is not enough. Leadership is naked, devout of servant in front of it. And so if you're going to be in leadership, you must be a servant leader so that you have servant leadership. And so your goal has to be to serve others. And when you start serving others, you become a leader. I love what John Maxwell said in one of his books, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. He says, you are not a leader until you raise another leader.
Yes.
You got to have a servant mentality to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And also getting down to that gratitude. I remember an incident. It's almost like my whole life here is at New Covenant. But I remember an incident where there was a musician that came to New Covenant, and he was from another city. I don't remember what city he was from. And of course he wanted to sell his product and, to the ministry. And our pastor, Pastor Bill, asked him the question, well, how many you want to give away? And he was very hesitant on that point. And so Pastor said, well, you can't get when you've got a closed hand. And that stuck with me as a business owner. So every time I do something now, I'm always trying to show my customers my gratitude. I have a business now, which is an online business, that every customer gets a gift from me. And it's a gift that they're not expecting, because I want them to know how grateful I am that they thought enough to spend their money with me. So that's another way we as a business owner need to be giving gratitude to our customers, because they don't have to spend their money with you. Be willing to give away some service or some product. It's the best way that you can learn, because I know a lot of business owners who start out, they give away their time. They said, hey, can I come and work in this business so that I can learn from you? You got to be able to give in order to really be a great leader.
What a novel idea. That is a great description of someone who's giving gratitude. Is before you start your business, find someone that has a business that you are starting and go and serve them. Go and ask them, do you need help? Can I sit up under you? Can I serve you and help you grow? And once you are able to do that, typically you start growing as well.
And what great lessons you'll learn as well by being part of them. So let's talk about, we have a little bit of time left, but I want to talk about Jesus consistently in a state of celebration. As we know, one of his first miracles was he was at a wedding and he turned the water into wine. But I like what Lori Beth Jones said when she talked about this topic. Is she said perhaps Jesus was letting us know that we need to lighten up, that we don't need to worry so much. So let's talk about that as we wrap up.
So you're saying that they're going to bring us a communion wine up here today? So we can lighten up the mood? Listen, celebration is important. You have to be happy about the things that God has done and the things that he is doing. Once you can have joy, even in that downtime, then what you're doing is saying, God, despite what I see here in the natural, I am so thankful that I can see past my current circumstance. That is huge.
Yes.
To have that kind of joy, to just break out in celebration every single day. You may be sitting in your car driving and you're at a light and you just stop and just say, Father, thank you for an opportunity. And you may be going to a serious situation, but you're still thanking God for the opportunity. Someone asked me one time, they said, do you ever unplug? Do you ever go on vacation and just unplug? And at first, when they started telling me that, I started thinking that, yes, I need to go on vacation. I need to totally unplug. But then I thought about it. How am I saying thank you to God if I unplug, if I'm needed where I'm needed? And so I'm grateful that people need to call me, because God has done a great work in us, allowing us to have these businesses and having these visions. You know, so many entrepreneurs that's out there, you know, you're listening to it right now, and maybe you didn't go to school. Maybe you went to school and this thing that God has put in your heart is so outside of your training, so outside of your education. But I want you to stop whatever you're doing, and I just want you to give God thanks for what he has put on the inside of you, because it is a thing that you can celebrate.
Absolutely.
It is amazing. And so we're coming to a stopping point.
Yes.
Now we can go on, and I believe we stopping because I hear the wine being poured back there somewhere. But anyway, we come to a stopping point here. Well, go ahead and take us out.
Yes. So we're concluding now this section on Jesus, his ministry, and the strength of self-mastery. And we've spent a lot of time talking about what you need to do for yourself as an entrepreneur, because you need to make sure that you're right before you start building a business, because you're the foundation of that. Knowing that God is your boss, knowing that you've got an internal anchor, knowing that you have a heart of gratitude, knowing that you know how to celebrate. All of those will help build the foundation for you as a Christian business owner, should I say a successful Christian business owner.
Oh, you got to change that. A highly successful, highly successful business owner.
So we're going to be coming back with more topics, more discussions to help you as a business owner. But we want to close this session out in prayer for our Christian businesses. So
absolutely.
So can we just take a moment and close out in prayer, and hope that you will join us for our next sessions as we continue. We'll continue to talk about the principles from the book, Jesus the CEO. But right now we want to close out in prayer.
Yes. Gracious Father, thank you for doing the things that you have done by sending your son to die on the cross, to shed his blood for us, that we might have opportunity of life, that we might be able to live in an abundant state. And Father, the abundant state is not necessarily material things or money. The abundant state is in our mind, Father, being able to understand that all good things come from you. Father, we thank you for the connections to the vine dresser. We thank you, Father, for our relationship from you with your son. Have your way in our life, in these businesses. Father, I pray right now that those that are out there, Father, that are struggling, Father, that you give them hope, that you strengthen their faith, strengthen their walk, so they come out of this better than they've ever been before. It's in your son, Jesus Christ's name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. And thank you so very much for joining us on this New Covenant Christian Ministry series, Entrepreneurship Series. And we hope that we have shared something with you that you will find useful, and that you will join us next time as we continue to talk about Jesus, the CEO. Thank you.
Do business in excellence.